Steph Fowler, PhD and Keto Coach of Australia. We are live. Welcome.
Thanks, Jonno. Thanks for having me again.
So last time we had you on, we were speaking about your remarkable health transformation, and obviously you'd done my food transformation coaching program. And today you are representing Real Meal Revolution in Australia as the Keto Coach. We're very excited. Very excited. And I thought the best question to kick off with would be to give us a little bit of a background on your health journey so far. So maybe like before you even reached Real Meal, I know that you injured your foot and there was this sort of enormous transformation that happened throughout your 20s. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I guess the biggest thing for me was one morning when I was about 28, I woke up and I fell out of bed at 7 a.m. I went to bed at 7 p.m. I just couldn't get myself going at all. I was about 23 kilos overweight. I had osteoarthritis in my left foot. I was borderline getting my foot fused, and I just was falling asleep at my desk by lunch. And I just thought, this has got to change. This isn't right. So that started me on a very long-winded journey to finding a GP, a doctor here in Australia, who recommended that I go on the buy the RMR book and go on the online platform as it was back in about, I think maybe 2016 that was a while ago now. So yeah, way back. So that was kind of a bit of a tipping point for me. And from there on in, I then found out that I had another really obscure skin condition, which is basically polycystic ovaries, but it's your skin that gets the cysts, not your ovaries. So that was linked with insulin resistance, which was why I was basically on the fast track to diabetes. I have type 2 diabetes on all sides of my family. And so I was basically just this big ticking time bomb. And the final straw for that time bomb was when I broke my left wrist coming off a horse. So it was, I guess the hardest part was trying to figure out what to do or where to go, because there's not that many resources here in Australia, particularly when you're in rural Australia. There's nothing. So
in Cowra.
Yeah.
I wish you could explain to South Africans what Cowra is like. It's like
it's easy. There's like 6,000 people in my district. You go 4 hours west of Sydney over the mountains and you're there.
Wow. I've seen photos. It's barren. So okay, so just to understand it properly, so you broke your foot after you joined Real Meal. Was it before? Okay, all right.
Yeah, so I was working as a Jillaroo in the middle of Northern Territory, which really is in the middle of nowhere. And came off a motorbike. I broke all of the bones and did a pretty good job. I do a good job of everything, it seems.
So I want to get into your qualifications because you've done some coaching work outside of health coaching as well, but then you also snuck in a PhD there. So could you tell us a little bit about your learning journey?
Yeah. So when after I broken my foot, I loved, I guess, the conversion from a live cow to food, which isn't something that many people, I guess, really like. We did a lot of on-farm butchery when I was up in the Northern Territory. So I got really fascinated with basically the ins and outs of what happens when you actually turn an animal into food. I broke my foot. I went to university. I discovered I was really good at ag and at doing it. So I was really lucky to be able to go through and go straight into honours and straight into PhD. So I have a couple of degrees now. So I've got a Bachelor of Agriculture, a Bachelor of Science honours, and then the PhD specifically in meat science, which is doctorate, basically a doctorate in meat science, which is really interesting because there's only about 12 of us in Australia that are actually meat scientists. So and then in the process of that, I'm an avid horse rider. I absolutely love horses, always have done. So for me, Jillarooing was kind of like the epitome. It was cows and horses, so there wasn't really much when I came back from. So Jillaroo, it's like a cowgirl. It's like an Australian cowgirl. So in Australia, we don't call them cowgirls and cowboys. We have like Jillaroos and Jackaroos. So when you see like the big, like we got this really they're made out of rabbit felt, actually. They're like these big hats that everybody wears on the stations, and yeah, they're called the Cobras. And so you know, it's the stereotypical big stock saddle and the big whip and riding out chasing cows. And yeah, we don't call them cowgirls, they're Jillaroos or Jackaroos. So yeah, that was the kind of the epitome of like high school me getting to put together the love of cows with the love of horses. So when I came back to uni and I was in the middle of Sydney, I was doing a Bachelor of Ag, and I still had my cow fix, but I didn't have my horse fix. So I went on, we've got an equestrian body here in Australia, a governing body, and I went on with them to do coaching. So I've been working as a horse riding coach now for, I don't really want to say how old I am because that'll give it away. Probably close to about 20, maybe 15 or 20 years now. So yeah, quite a while coaching. And horse riding is one of those really interesting sports because you're actually trying to teach someone how to feel something, because it's all, when you're sitting on a horse, it's all done by feel. So you're visually looking at something and then trying to tell somebody how to, you know, get a better feel, or how to get softer, how to get a better partnership with their horse, which it's just a really interesting, different dynamic. And of course, we all learn differently. So trying to, you know, someone that's quite a visual learner, when you don't have those skills to be able to teach them how to get that feel is, yeah, it's something I really enjoy doing.
Yeah, I mean, it was new to me as well, because I always thought when I was on a horse and I was just pulling, you know, I was like, well, I'm almost not pulling hard enough, or I'm not kicking it, or maybe if I kick it and pull it, like, this poor horse is probably ready to kill me. And so actually working with you, I realized, you know, it's a lot more psychology than actual practical effort. Like it's really it makes me think of Avatar, where they like really connect, like literally connect with the other animal. Like I had no idea that it was such a touchy-feely sport, actually. But it's, you know, I don't know if you have more to say about that, but it blew my mind.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And horses, I think, by nature are quite transformative. So, you know, you're spot on there with it's quite psychological. I always say that, you know, we get kids that are 20, 30 kilos wringing wet that come in with ponies that are easily, you know, 300, 400 kilos. And I mean, I now weigh 60 odd kilos. And if I want to get my 600 kilo thoroughbred to do anything, like there's no way I can pull out anything her. Like if she wants to carry me out of the arena, which she learned she could, she's like, I'm done. Like we're out of here. So it is very much a mind game, and it is very much mindset and confidence in being able to not only understand yourself and where you're coming from and where your strengths and weaknesses and where your limitations are as a person, but then how do you get that conversation going with something that, you know, we're not even talking a person that can interact with our own body language. You know, like when you think about how you interact with someone that can't understand English or can't understand, you know, Afrikaans or German, or, you know, you have a different way of like pointing at things and being able to, and with a horse, you don't even have that. So it's that species barrier, and being able to work through that species barrier is something that is really, really special, because it is, you know, I can't demand a horse do anything. I can't flog a horse into submission. You know, and so it's just that, and it's the tool set that you get too, because not everything works first time. So you've got to keep going, and you've got to find different ways and find different mentors and take this little bit from this person and take that bit from that person, because we're all just basically interpreting what we think the horse is presenting, because we don't really know. And so then to try and teach somebody how to do that as well adds an extra layer. And so, yeah, I've really, and then there's the element of fear, and there's a lot of other things that our horses bring out or amplify in us. And when you think about, you know, I guess it's like any sport, we spend such a relatively short time doing that sport. So, you know, I might spend an hour with each horse every day, and then there's 23 hours that I'm away from the horse. And so everything I do away from that situation, that's what I'm bringing to the table when I go to those interactions. And I think there's something really powerful in that. And I guess that's why horses are really used as like equine therapy. There's a lot of like veterans and a lot of disability type services that are now using horses, because that's, there's such a thing in our intention and our body language and our mindset and what we're bringing to the table with each other. That's really,
There's an anecdote I read in Lost Connections, the book about depression. And and I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it was a donkey or a horse, but I'm pretty sure that the cure for depression in this Asian country, I mean, not like a rural Asia, and they said, what do you do when someone's depressed? And they said, well, just, like, obviously we could just give them a horse. Like that's the guys answered the question like what else would you possibly think of doing? Like don't give them drugs. The guy needs a horse because they need something they can connect with and look after, and like gives them purpose and meaning. Anyway, so like the horse riding, I mean, so deeply spiritual sport, but now you've moved into coaching human beings. So I don't know which question to ask first, because I'm sure through connecting with horses, there's been a lot of personal development, which is what led you to becoming a coach for human beings, or whether that's something that you are used to coaching human beings doing, because you're basically coaching people to open up and connect with another being, which is what we would do in human coaching too. So I don't know, that's not even a question, you can just speak.
It is a little bit of both. So horses by their very nature are really transformative, and they of course are my biggest why. So trying to lose weight, 20 kilos overweight, I'm in my mid-20s. Everybody thinks it's easy, and I've got doctors telling me, just go out there and just exercise more and eat less. Like, obviously you're lying to us about what you're eating. You're young, you should be energetic. Like, what do you mean you've got osteoarthritis? Like, just get out there and crack on with life. Like, we don't know what to do with you. You're too young for this. So I was persistent because horses were my biggest why. So connecting with that deepest layer of my motivation was definitely something that I guess propelled me forward. And then having that transformation myself has then propelled me like, hey, if I can do this, then others can too. Because I don't know, like if a 20-something-year-old in the middle of Cowra with not even the middle of Cowra, I was like 25, 40 Ks or something out of Cowra with no internet reception at home. So I kind of felt like if I can do this working a full-time job with all this other stuff, we're trying to, be a normal 20-something-year-old, then there's so many other people out there that could benefit from the knowledge that I've got. So that was one level. The second level was, I am used to coaching people. And I guess because the way that horse riding works and the way that it works as a sport is, we all are making interpretations. And, I think that one of my favorite quotes is kind of this thing about, I'm just going to be up here on my trailer turfing out hay. And if you like the hay that I'm throwing out, then you're going to come and pick it up. And it's that whole thing of, for me, really connecting with people is something that I've always loved doing. I've always, I'm a storyteller by nature. I love talking to people. I love finding out what people's stories are. And
you tell great stories, by the way.
Thank you. I was like, because we've worked together for a while now, so it would be really awkward if you're like, actually, no, Steph.
Love me a Steph story, yeah.
And I don't know, like, and it's that whole layer, like I'm pretty passionate about what I do. I love what I do, and I just can't help but, I'm one of those people that, if you stop in the supermarket and you're looking at something, I'm probably going to strike up a conversation. So short of, talking about horses, the other thing that's just been, this whole low carb journey for me, this whole keto journey is just been completely transformative. So I want to share that with people. Like, I want to share that with people. I'm like, people, talk to me.
Yeah, I want you to share that with me now. So you've got so look, the fact that you're a meat scientist is just like the best thing ever. So, because, it's almost like, so, because you just know it from the other side, like, all the like at a cellular level, what happens to our bodies and how we metabolize and stuff. So, and you were sold on keto. So, like, for anyone who's watching this who like isn't quite sold yet, I want to hear like what convinced you that keto was just made sense, and how you, because scientists usually like, no, anything that, you know, like I've studied this and this is wrong, but you would have been quite far. It was 2016 was only like 5 years ago, so you would have already been a PhD, or maybe almost, and then you heard this and you're like, yeah, cool, I can buy that. So I want to know that story. Like, how did you buy it, and what do you think about the science now?
So I guess for me, the first thing is insulin's role in the body. So when we talk about metabolism and we talk about the metabolism of carbohydrates, we know it spikes insulin. And insulin does three things. And the first one is like basically facilitate sugar going into cells. But in order to do that, it has to prioritize sugar over fat. So in putting sugar into cells, it stops fat from being burnt from cells. Like, that's nutrition 101. Like, Masters of Nutrition is something that I'm doing now. And that's what they tell you, like nutrition, physiology 101. This is what insulin does in the body. Bang, bang. And there's another one, which is like, I can't remember off the top of my head. So as soon as you talk about, like, sugar is so toxic to the body that the body has to get rid of it first. It has to do something with it first before it will let you burn fat, because fat's not toxic. Like, it has implications in terms of, you know, obesity and all of that sort of thing as we layer more and more fat on. But fat itself in the body is not toxic. If you have too much sugar in your blood, that's when you start getting into hyperglycemia. So the body wants to stop that from happening. It's the same as, like, we have mechanisms to actually stop us from going into hypoglycemia. So our liver has the capacity to make sugar. So the range of sugar in our blood is like this really concentrated, concrete, you know, there's an upper, there's a lower limit, and our body will prioritize keeping it within that range to maintain homeostasis, or our normal functioning self. Because that's all our body wants to do, is it wants to come back to a steady state, and that's homeostasis. So as soon as I started getting into the biochemistry of what happens, it just made sense that clearly, because of the way and just how toxic both long-term and short-term high sugar in our system is, you know, having high insulin then happens because we end up getting blunted to the effects of insulin within the cells, because it's constantly being bombarded with high sugar. And like, it's something that it annoys me greatly, because it's something that's in all of the textbooks, you know, all of the nutrition stuff, all the nutrition lecturers, that's what they all say. And yet there's no consensus that that's actually bad for us. Even
they're like, here's this thing that's really unhealthy for you, and like, here's all the science, and then the advice is to basically like do the opposite of what the science says. Yeah.
Just keep eating 60% carbs. Like, just keep eating 60% carbs. And like, the advice that I was given by one doctor literally was, well, like, because I went in there and I was like, look, I cannot lose weight. And she's going, yeah, you can. Like, you must be lying. And I'm like, does the fact that I've got a PhD not account for anything? Like, what do you think? I'm just going to, like, walk? And she goes, oh, you know, everybody wants the pills. And I'm like, hello, I have a problem. Like, I have a genuine problem. And sure enough, like 6 months later, I get my fasting insulin checked finally, and it was 3 times what it should be. So my blood sugar's going up and down and up and down, because my insulin levels are just so high, but my body was so insensitive to insulin and its effects. There was no way my body was going to prioritize burning fat over sugar. It was flat out trying to deal with the sugar. Just everything clicked.
Everything clicks. So everything clicks. You lose all this weight. I can't believe it's 20 kilos. That's nuts. And obviously improve your health quite a lot. I mean, you know, we've been on this journey and it's amazing. And then you just decide one day, cool, well, I'm kind of bored of being a meat scientist, horse riding coach, and. But instead of quitting all the other stuff, I'm just going to add on and be a keto coach as well. So what made you decide to become a keto coach?
If it takes me 4 years, a company in another country. I don't know how many layers of coaching and whatnot I've got, and I still couldn't get it right. I was like, how does the person that is just out there, they know they're a bit overweight, they know, you know, things could be better, but they don't know what to do about it. How do they even have a go? Where do they even, like, how does that, it just doesn't, it doesn't compute in my head at all. And it was just that whole thing of like, I feel like now I know the way. Like, I know there's this path out here, and it might not be exactly the right path for everybody, but there is a version of that path that can work for so many other people that are out there feeling like I was when I was, you know, mid-20s and falling asleep at my desk at lunchtime. Like, it just, and I feel like the policy and the dietary guidelines and everything we're being sold is letting us down. But nobody in government wants to be the one to put up their hand and say, oops, we made a mistake. And I get that. Yeah. As a scientist, I totally get that, because, you know, like, there's so many, you know, you spend your life researching a thing, and you go, you know, 20, 30, 40 years on that thing. And I always say, like, if I wanted to prove that the world was flat, I could easily go back and find references and cite things that would back that up. And all I would need is a handful of people crazy enough to peer review my, you know, the earth is flat paper, and it would be published somewhere, and I could go to the press and I could say, look, the earth is flat, but that doesn't mean that it is flat. And so, you know, the dietary guidelines, and it goes back to that whole thing around Ansel Keys and the mistakes that were made in America, and then the rest of the world has followed suit. And if I'm sitting here with the highest echelons of university degrees and I struggled for 5 years, then it's kind of like, once you know the way, I feel like it's almost my duty to help others find their better way, because that's what I had. That's what I needed. So, you know, it's kind of sharing the word, I guess.
Totally. Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. Like the academic, the what do they call it? Like the there was, when I watched that debate. Did you watch the Joe Rogan debate on what was the vegan propaganda thing? The Game Changer.
Don't even get me onto vegans. Don't even get me onto. Don't even do that one. Like,
yeah,
like you want to go high carb?
No, I don't want to talk about
that. High carb is one thing, but I'm like, oh man,
no.
like,
so,
oh.
No, so I thought it was very stimulating. So the debunking of it was great, but then the guy who produced it, he came and debunked the guy who debunked it. So it was like, so the Joe Wilkes, the guy who was in, you know, it was hilarious. And so anyway, like, he actually knew his stuff. He made some pretty good points about like B12 being fed to cows with supplements or whatever. Like, and so anyway, it was very interesting. I found it interesting. But one of the things they kept doing, and then they kept calling each other out on, was appeal to authority. Is it called that? Appeal to authority? Appeal to. And so they're like, oh, but this scientist who's like the professor of whatever at Harvard. And it's almost like nowadays, because I know how it all works, like the more hardcore the scientist's credentials are, you know, the less likely they are to have their mind changed. And so like that appeal to authority thing now for me has like the opposite effect. If you can say like the most hardcore scientist on a matter says this, then that's almost cause for me to be like, okay, well, that's definitely not right, because that oak probably hasn't decided to change his mind in like 30 years. Anyway, I don't know why I went on that rant.
There's a thing though. There's a I don't even know the name of it, but there's a thing where the more you know, the more you know you don't know. And
yes, so that's called the Dunning-Kruger effect.
The Dunning-Kruger, that's right. Yeah. So I always, and people find it really weird when I sit there and I go, you know, like at work, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, because I'm so painfully aware that, you know, everything I'm doing is like a hypothesis driven. So we think something's going to happen. We go out there, we do our best guess at actually testing what we think, and then it either works or it doesn't work. And then you've got to either prove or disprove your hypothesis. But science is now, and nutritional science is the same. Science now is overlaid with commercial and industry-based funding because we don't pay people to think like they used to. So in Greece, it was a thing, like ancient Greece, it was a thing that you could just be a philosopher. And, you know, you might come to me and go, look, I've got this problem. And I'd sit there and think about it for a while. And then you'd be so thankful that I solved your problem that you'd pay me something or feed me or, you know, and people could actually do that. And students would come and they would, you know, intern. And now, like, to get money to do science, you've got to sell your idea to some industry body that wants to pay, basically. Because the whole thing, you know, universities are making money from students and they're making money from research grants.
Yeah.
And I have a friend.
No, you go. But this is escalating.
I had a friend.
We'll get back to coaching just now.
But I had a friend that would say that if he had enough money, he would buy a university to turn it into an education.
Oh, wow.
Institute.
That's deep.
But when you think about the implications for that on human health, right? So this is where we're going to go back to coaching because so if I'm a meat scientist and I'm making a hypothesis and I'm having a best guess and I'm trying something and it works or it doesn't work and then we go back to the drawing board, that's me with a chunk of meat. What are the nutritionists doing? And, you know, there's this little thing we like to call welfare and ethics these days where you can't, like in the olden days, you used to be able to take a nutrient away from people and then see what it did to them. And then you go, oops, look, they're all really sick now. We better give it back. Oh, here's the critical level at which we can give it back. There's none of that anymore. So we're getting more and more into epidemiological studies, which are making it really, really hard. So you want to talk about, like, you know, things like red meat's being demonized because it's high in saturated fats. Well, how do we know that saturated fats are bad? Are they really bad? We don't know. You know, and then the choices, because people, you know, is a red meat that's come from a salami the same as a red meat from a steak?
And what kind of, and how is the cow, if we're comparing two different steaks, you know? So I have to just add in like my little science thing, but like there was a study I found last year. I think it doesn't matter. So the study was the biggest what is it, cohort study when they or meta-analysis where they take like everything and then they restudy it and whatever, and basically they were trying to find out what the cause of obesity was in relation to like foodstuffs available. And what their conclusion was, and don't say anything until I've told you like after the conclusion. So the conclusion was that the countries where there are the highest obesity rates are not obese because of the access that they have to processed food. They are obese because there is an absence of real good food. In other words, and so what but they didn't say that. That's what the data said to them. What they said in their conclusion was that it isn't the presence of processed food that makes people fat. It is the absence of real healthy foods. Now, let me just share one little insight from coaching, which is now that we're going to go back into coaching. And then, so if you're telling me like there is there is some healthy food over there, but then there is like Cheetos and you know, Snickers and Lay's and Coca-Cola sitting there, like you're telling me that the people are going to choose to have the unhealthy food instead of, and they're going to choose to have that healthy meal instead of like all the stuff that's being advertised to them. Like there is no ways that study makes any sense. And then I looked at who the funders were, and like it was literally, you know, that photograph that you've seen with like the 5 or 7 big food companies and all of their subsidiaries.
Nestle,
so it was like it was all of them, and then the, geez, I almost said the Noakes Foundation. It's definitely not them. It was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So and like I was kind of like, but now I'm like, come on, man, that's absolute crap. How can you guys fund a study like that? And so basically there are billions and billions of dollars, and then Monsanto and all the food giants funded a study that says our food's not bad. It's the fact that all the guys who make healthy food, like they're not marketing it hard enough because they're not there anyway. minor segue.
But
Steph, talk to me about coaching. Yeah.
That leads perfectly into coaching, because that's a great, and I mean, for me, a great deal of my health journey was, I know what I should be eating, but I'm sitting here putting this in my mouth instead of the salad or instead of the whatever. And that's one of the hardest things we face, I think. And then if we are sitting there eating the healthy food, then there's 8 people around us that are going, "Oh, you're eating healthy today. Like, what's the salad? Like, what?" And you cop so much flack for, and it's like obesity is becoming the new normal. And so if you step out of that, or you're trying to step out of that, even how to step out of that. And I've been thinking, I guess, a lot more about this recently too, is because I almost feel like there's a few different kind of people that I talk to on a regular basis. And that's either I know what I should be doing, but I can't bring myself to do it. Or there's so many diets, so many things in the world. Which one do I do? Which one is right? Which one is the one that people should be doing? Is that processed food that's labeled healthy actually healthy, or am I falling for a marketing trap? Because there's so many companies like that out there that are labeling really high sugar laden foods with no added sugar.
Yeah, it's not added sugar, it's it's honey. It's honey, or it's what's it, coconut palm sugar? It's not real sugar.
There's such a commercial thing to a lot of this stuff now that, and I love that video that you did a while back on the health bars, that actually 80% of them weren't health bars, because they had, they had more sugar in it than the bloody Mars bar or the Snickers. And then you overlay that with the cultural, and you overlay that with the, the socioeconomics. And, I live in a rural area. It is really, we don't have a health food store in town. So, if I want to get almond meal and there's none at the supermarket because there's only, a really small health section at the supermarket, that's me done. I've got to order it online.
Yeah, grind your own almonds.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you enjoy? Yeah, let's bring it back to coaching with real meals. So you're keto coaching now, and by the way, like, keto coaching with Real Meal Revolution in Australia. Woo! And that's my really excited look. Yeah, exactly. What are some of the things you love about doing that? Clearly you love talking people out of the old dogma, but what are some of the other things you're enjoying about it?
I really love being able to support people in their accountability, and be there for people in those tricky moments. So I kind of liken it to the hot cross bun situation in our hero group, where I was the only person in the office not eating hot cross buns over Easter, and it was pain. And so being able to text the group and be like, "Oh my god, they're still there, help me, I'm thinking about it." So when people do that to me, or they're confused in the supermarket, just having somebody to actually send a photo of an information bar to and say, "Hey, I'm really stuck. Do I get this one or do I get that one?" Because that's I guess that's the sort of thing where you can get unstuck pretty quick. And it's having that experience, and it's being able to, give the clients my 4 years of experience without them having to go through all of the ins and outs and all of the stuff that I went through in that 4 years, and the roller coaster that was. And then seeing them benefit from my experience. That's what I really love about it. I've got one client at the moment and she's absolutely nailing it. She's been in for only a couple of weeks, and it's like, I think she's lost more centimeters off her waist than I lost in 4 years. And I'm just like, "You're a good thing. You're amazing."
Oh, that's awesome.
It's just being able, and that's I love being there for people. And I'm a bit of a chatty Cathy. I love having those conversations and just getting into the realness. People share I'm stuck on this, I'm really stuck on this, I'm feeling really vulnerable about this, and being able to connect with people on that real, I don't want to talk about the weather. I want to know about what's really going on for you. So that's something that's incredibly empowering, that people let me into that aspect of their lives.
Yeah, it's super rewarding here. Like, that's awesome. So I suppose the last question really is around the kind of people who you like working with, but also the kind of people who you think would really benefit from coaching. The people watching this who think like, oh, yeah, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, but I don't know if it's right for me. Like, what do you think? Who do you think coaching is right for? And obviously we think it's right for everybody, but there are people who it's better suited for. So maybe give us some clarity on that, and then maybe talk to like the things that some of the problems you really love to troubleshoot and work with.
Yeah, so I think the two sorts of people that really benefit from coaching, I think, are either those that have tried 80,000 things, they've got no idea what to do next or where to go next. There's so many different things that are out there. Even if you look up low carb, there's so many different ways of doing it, and just having someone that's experienced with some solid advice. And we've got Bridget, we've got Sam and the team all behind us, and being able to step people through with that wealth of experience and knowledge when they've got no idea where to go. Or the other, which is like me, which is like I know what I should be doing. I know the ins and outs of like the biochemistry, or, I know this is the right food and I've got all the books, but I just can't stop putting the chips and the Parmigiana in my mouth. Help me.
So someone, so what's self-helplessness?
Yeah, it's almost like a learned, what do they call it? It's like a dissociation, like a learned helplessness. And just having someone accountable to being able to say, like, hey, what's going on for you today, Jonno? Like, you haven't checked in with me. What's happening? What, and then being able to say, well, look, I'm finding myself in these triggers. I'm finding myself with these, I can't work through these situations. Help me. I think they're the two sorts of people that really benefit from these sort of coaching.
Awesome.
That would be my... Mike, I think what was the rest of the question?
Well, I think the question, so the other half was actually, no. So it was like, who would benefit? And then also, what are the problems that you love to troubleshoot the most?
I think what I love to troubleshoot the most is probably when people are sort of out there and they feel stuck. So that might be like you're out at a restaurant and everybody else is ordering X, Y, Z, and you feel like you need to go with what everybody else is doing because that's what you usually do. I really enjoy it's almost like the circuit breaker, like the habit breaker. I really enjoy nutting through, like the scientist in me kind of gets a little bit like, oh, this is like, how do we navigate this? How can we do this? Yeah. Like, what's the motivation going on here? Like, where do you sit with this? So I get really curious about situations like that, or, where people slip up, being able to help them step back and assess what's going on and reflect, because that's been one of the biggest things for me in my journey, was being able to kind of lean on Sam and say like, oh, that didn't go as planned, and have her kind of help me step through. And because I had so much success with that, being able to help other people like step through those same things and it's sort of, it empowers me as well, because I share their win. Like, I'm so enthusiastic and passionate, and I'm almost like dancing on tables, like, fuck yeah, they got that. Like, they were struggling with that, and now they've nailed it. Like, yes. And as you know, I'm the gift queen. So I just love sending, like, and I really get in on it and really love celebrating the successes. So helping people work through those sticky moments is definitely like the best thing.
That's awesome. So this is this is Steph Fowler. Woo! Keto coach from Australia. If you're in Australia, look us up. Steph is ready to coach you. Steph, you're also running a hero program next month, aren't you? Yes.
I hope so.
So if you want to join the hero program, or you want one-on-one coaching in Australia, Steph is your woman, and she's fucking awesome. All right, Steph, have a wonderful day. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jonno.
Cool. Bye.